Welcome, Leo, to your Uranus into Gemini 1 year forecast for the ascendant, the sun, or the moon. Across the 25th or the 26th of April, depending on where you live, Uranus, the planet of freedom and innovation, returns to the fleet footed air sign of Gemini for the next 7 years. He briefly visited last year for 4 months. We can talk about Uranus in Gemini from a broad viewpoint, but what about from a specific Leo perspective? I'm going to share with you the event chart on screen of the exact moment that Uranus arrives back in Gemini. All the other planetary influences feed into that moment, and that provides a unique perspective of what we can expect. But I'm also going to feature the Sun Moon midpoint to give the analysis that much more depth and penetration. By the end of the forecast, you'll have a clear idea of what you can expect around energy, work, relationships, and finances over the next 12 months. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundel. A very warm welcome. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so now to help it to continue to thrive. But please also click or tap the bell notification symbol. So on the screen, Leo, is the event chart. And there's Uranus just into the sign of Gemini. Now, I recently did an 84-year Uranus cycle video and also reprised his journey through the sign of Taurus, which is just completing. I'm not going to focus on that today. I want to really grapple with how this is going to be over this next year for you personally. So there's Uranus, and it's in your 11th house. So just to give you a little bit of a wider perspective, the 11th house has an echo of the sign of Aquarius, even though the host is Gemini. But the thing they have in common is that air energy, very much about fast communication. Further, Uranus is the modern higher octave ruler of the sign of Aquarius, very much to do with progressiveness and new ideas. Fresh thinking is, in mythology, the ruler of the sky. But in the 11th house, that points very much towards your future plans, your connections, your network, and critically, your friendships. But Uranus also is the higher octave planet connected to Mercury, the ruler of the sign of Gemini. So he's going to be a lot more comfortable here than he was in Taurus. But what about the reception committee? Well, Venus, you can see, the planet of relating, is in Gemini, and it's a great place for Venus to be. It can be very vivacious, perhaps a little bit flirty. But if you have found it difficult to get together with your friends of late, this is certainly going to give you a lot of impulse to make things happen and to make them happen quickly. But you know, that can play out over the next 12 months too. So do expect a lot more social interaction. It's also possible with Venus being about money as well as romance that your long-term plan could at some point be supercharged by a brilliant new idea, which can bring some real excitement. But for sure, Venus can be about relationships. And when Uranus connects to Venus, we can get the feeling that something needs to be shook up. So if you're in a long-term relationship, but you're good friends, you're going to thrive off this energy. You're just going to try and reinvent the relationship over the next year. So that's positive. If you're not such good friends, you don't have so much in common, you don't feel that someone is going to be for the long term, I think it's highly likely that that relationship will end. But if you are relating well to someone, the energy of Pluto in your sector of relating, linking back to Venus and also Uranus more broadly, suggests that actually you can get deeper. But what can deeper and more connected? But to achieve that, maybe a greater sense of honesty will come to the fore. And perhaps some old issues that have been avoided can be discussed but also released. But if we look at the overall map, the most dominant player in it is the sun. The sun is at the top of the northern hemisphere, and of course, the sun's at the heart of all our existences. So it's possible that when it comes to your professional situation, If you are in an environment at the moment which is perhaps a tad conventional, you may be yearning for something that's fresh and different. But the Sun is actually in a very challenging link to Pluto. So if you are in any kind of relationship, doesn't matter who with, where there's some kind of power dynamic, I feel you will start to resist that and want to break away and basically live the relationship and your situation based on your values, which is what Uranus and Venus together are very much about. But what about the ruler of the sign of Gemini? That's Mercury. It's in a brilliant part of your situation for travel, higher education, and broadening your horizons generally. But Mercury is in a square with Jupiter in the sign of Cancer. So when it comes to the more emotional dimension of your situation, I think you could be surprised because of the logic of Uranus and Venus in the air sign of Gemini, that actually Jupiter can make you even more conscious, like it has over the last year, of learning more and more about what makes you tick, but also understanding more about what makes others tick as well. So if you're broadening your understanding through the energy of this particular event, it really wouldn't be a surprise. But I want to also share with you Neptune. Neptune can be the planet of dreams, imagination, and it's a mystical energy for sure, but it's in a beautiful alliance with Venus. The more that you can expand your world over the next year, whether it's through your talents, the arts, creativity, or even just pleasure, you're going to encounter some people who really can excite you. But it's possible, if you're single, that you could meet the relationship that will define the rest of your life. And I don't tend to say these things lightly. However, if we look at the position of the moon, very much to do with our emotional dimension. That's in your sign, but it's so near to the end, just 8 minutes away from being in Virgo and your second house, that actually forges a square to Uranus. And that's an energy that's quite interesting. People who have Moon Uranus aspects in their natal chart can be hugely intuitive, pick up on energy very fast, but it also can give people a need for some space. And what I would suggest is, because it is so close to that second house cusp, that maybe when it comes to the finance or the budget you have to lead your life in a bit more of a free spirited way, you will need to make sure that it can be affordable to you. Now, I need to tell you about two lunar eclipses that have come in, 28th of August and the 20th of February. And they both the position of the sun and the moon in opposition, are going to forge a T-square to Uranus. Why? Because Uranus goes into a retrograde, its annual 5 month retrograde on the 10th of September, and will invert from around about 5 degrees back to 1. And that's why it has an exact T square to both eclipses. Now, lunar eclipses can be very highly charged events. And for you, it's very much about balancing the second and eighth house energies of your situation. That can be where we're most attached. But Uranus is a planet which likes to break down attachment. It likes to live our lives very much more in the moment. So you could find that if there is something you're staying with because it feels safe, you could be confronted by the circumstances around you somehow change, which push you to confront the reality as is now. However, if you are attracted to someone in a business idea or a romantic context, if their values don't align with yours, that could be an issue, however much you fancy them, and the chances are you could fancy them quite a lot. But I want to share with you about that Sun Moon midpoint, Leo. You may have heard of this concept. I'll explain if not. So the Sun and the Moon at the shortest point are divided by 2. That gives us a midpoint at just shy of 3 degrees in the sign of Cancer. But if we look at the position of Neptune in that ninth house, that means there's an exact square between them. For me, the midpoint between the sun and the moon is the yin yang of a person's natal chart or an event's natal chart. So this suggests, despite this very cerebral, innovative, fast-moving, electric energy that comes from Uranus in the air sign of Gemini in the 11th house, you really need to stay in touch with your deeper emotional compass. Now, Jupiter is encouraging that as well, but I would suggest if you do encounter someone over the next year who does have some kind of imperceptible vibe about them that you can't quite put your finger on, you could find yourself tempted because it feels so electric and exciting. But always take it back to your gut feeling, take it down to instinct, because that person may be very hard to understand and could have a huge impact on you, but not necessarily in a positive way. I'm going to summarize those four areas of energy, work, relationships, and finances next, Leo. But just to say, if you've yet to watch your May monthly forecast for Leo, that's on the screen. If you've yet to watch your Uranus 84-year cycle video to get the big picture on Uranus's movements, that's on the screen. I've slashed the price of my personal horoscopes. You can now pay for one but get three for the price of one. The one you pay for is your life roadmap report, which helps us to understand the patterns that are played out in our lives so far, but to get a more intimate understanding of ourselves and how to manage our life future forwards. But you get free your 12 months transits for the year ahead and also your draconic soul karmic analysis. Why? Because I know that people are feeling the pinch, but second, I'm really passionate about wanting to share astrology to more people. Please see below for more. If you'd like to work with me directly, please check out my testimonials. And if you've yet to sign up for your free daily horoscope, fire to your device each morning, get your early day celestial pit stop, you can do so below too. So to summarize, when it comes to your work, because the sun, this is a sun dominant chart, the sun in Taurus is very much about solid results, tangible outcomes, so stability and security. But if you work in an environment where there are power battles or someone who's not very nurturing or encouraging, or the job is rather dull, I think it's highly likely that you're going to want to break out of that and do something that's fresh, more interactive, and potentially much more of a community that you're working with. That could be online. It could be in a physical sense. It may be that you could work remotely, but if you're working with people that you have the same vision with, that can see you make huge progress. When it comes to your energy, I think you should be conscious of both Jupiter and the Sun Moon midpoint being in your 12th house. Important, therefore, to nurture the deeper part of your emotion, despite all this electric effervescent energy. And also because of those two eclipses coming up, if you are someone who has some kind of attachment, whatever it may be, to food, to a particular lifestyle choice, you could be pushed to free yourself from that in order to increase your physical vitality. What about neat finance? Well, do you know, despite the fact the sun is in that challenging angle with Pluto, the North Node in your eighth house of longer term finances is in a very positive link with the sun. And I think if you can find the balance between doing a job which is rewarding, gives you a degree of status, also pays you what you need, but is also interesting and stimulates your mind, then you will do really well around your financial situation. Now, specifically about love, I think it does depend on your unique situation. But remember the concept. If it is a relationship where the friendship side of it is good and it keeps you alive, it's not too run of the mill and predictable, I feel that you're going to be absolutely fine. That relationship can get closer. If you're single, I think there's every chance you're going to meet more than one person over the next year. It's just deciphering who's truly right for you. But if you are in a relationship which you're not enjoying and it's with someone you don't see a long-term future with or much of a friendship, I think you're going to break free. Thank you so much for joining me, Leo. All the best and see you again.